Okay, right. I believe we can get started. So yesterday we stopped our class with just the introduction to CSS. Let me know how was your experience. Was it too fast, or do you need to recap a few things? You can
For
see
me,
it
it
was
was okay.
okay. Okay. Right. Bravin, how was your experience? I know you dropped off.
Yeah, hello. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so my experience was okay. I dropped off because of power at my place, but today I've had to move somewhere where I know I wouldn't drop off class. I've had to redo I was hoping to have the recording on LMS, but I didn't find it. So what I did, I just went online and refreshed my mind with a few things, and then restarted my whole project and did a few things on CSS. So I would say it's nice.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Ashley.
Yeah, the class is easy to follow. So,
Okay. Uh, okay. Thank you. So I'm glad you guys are okay in the meantime, because we were still on the fundamentals. Yeah. So for today's class, we'll be doing a bit more advanced here CSS. Um, so later on, you'll notice it's still basic, but because we'll introduce some other concepts in the future classes. But for now, we still need to lay some foundation on how we structure our document. So yesterday, it was whatever we have right now is actually easy to, you can even launch it, you can share it with your friends, because we have some color, some font, some images. So our files are actually much easier to use, right? Sorry about that. Now, in this in today's class, will our effects may not be so visible on the front end. They will not be quite dramatic as yesterday's, but it will help us, it will give us a foundation for what we'll be doing in the future, right? So give me a second as I share my screen, and then we can get started. Okay, which that one? Give me a second. Okay, so I hope you can see the slides. Now, yesterday we stopped at the box elements, specifically where we had the box model. That is a CSS concept in how all elements are displayed on a browser. So we have the border, we have the margin, we have the width, and we have padding, right? So most of our elements are always structured in that sense. So we have, as you can see, we have the margin, it's the outside. We have the border, which is the how you're going to surround your elements. Now, the border is actually visible when you're talking about buttons. Later, probably in the future, we look at cards. So you can easily put a border like a dotted line or a square. You can change the effects, so on. So it looks like it's floating and so on. Then padding is the space between the border and the content, so the text. Right. So with this in mind, I really rushed through yesterday because this concept will be coming up over and over as you continue working on the front end, on your front end journey. Okay. So there's a few concepts also that we need to understand, and that is on attributes. Right. So I want to start from here. So of course it will be a little bit of theory for a second before we touch on our code. So HTML attributes are basically how we can easily style an element or even refer to it. So in this case, we are want to refer to a particular HTML element, right? So when you talk about element, think of a paragraph or a table. We'll do that probably later. We'll have a we touched on links like anchor links. We've also touched on, we've not touched on lists yet. We've also touched on headings. Those are the elements you're talking about. Now, anytime you want to work on them when you're coding, you need to be able to reference to each uniquely or as a group. So we have an attribute called ID. This HTML attribute is used to specify the unique ID for an element, okay? And then it's a unique identifier. Think of it like how you have your national ID. That number is just yours alone, right? No one else in Kenya has that number, or your phone number, right? And not anyone else within 254 has that particular number. So it's easier to track this particular number belongs to this person, or this ID, national ID number belongs to this person. So that is the same concept when you're talking about an HTML ID. The ID will help us to uniquely identify any element that we have, right? So you cannot have maybe three elements having the same ID, okay? It will clash. I think normally it will pick the first one and then the rest are ignored. Right. So for you to use an ID, you just need to put the hash character, like the hashtag, before the name that you want to give it. Right. So how you refer to an ID is just by giving it a name. So that is for only unique values. When you want to uniquely identify an element, use an ID. But there's also a case where you want to reference multiple elements as one, right? So since you've just said you cannot have more than one element with the same ID, you can use a class attribute to achieve the same function, right? So the class attribute is used to specify the class for an HTML element. Um, and then multiple elements will share that same class. So the class is basically a name that can be given to different people. So let's use a context of a family. In a family, usually pick this. The surname is usually the same for almost everyone, right? Um, but then the first name is unique within that family. Yeah. So everyone called Anne, we have Collins, we have Ravin. In that family, we'll have one name, right? We'll have unique name that can be the ID. But then since we are one family, we all have one last name. That is the class. So whenever we call the name of that family, we'll be using a class and we'll be referring to any member of the class of that family, right? So the class attribute will help us to do the same with multiple HTML elements, right? And if you want to write it, you just use the dot character before the name, right? Now, these two are important because we will be using it a lot in programming. Even if you decide to continue with the front-end journey and become a software developer, ID and class is just the fundamentals. It's like the ABCs of programming, because at any given point, you might want to uniquely identify a particular element or a group of elements. So at that point you use a class. But we'll expand on it much better when you are in the JavaScript section. So this is just the foundation that you need to understand for us to work with CSS. So there, in our particular class, we'll be using both ID and class in CSS, in JavaScript, just to modify the different HTML elements. So a good example is yesterday, we were having several paragraphs and then we changed the color to red initially. Now, all the elements changed to red, right? Or right now we have given all the paragraph elements a new color, many things like some grayish purple color, right? So if you want to uniquely change each one of them, you can use either a ID or you can use a class to achieve that. Right. So that's the first scenario. Now, in CSS, we also have selectors, right? So this is a pattern of elements and other terms that tell the browser which element should be uh, selected to have that like a value. If you remember yesterday, the structure of a CSS code, we have the element, that's the selector that we were talking about, and then we have the declaration. Inside the declaration, you have the property and its value. Now, when you're using either a class or an ID, we can easily assign values or give it some property based on that idea, right? So we use these selectors to find the element and then to style it. Okay, so either the elements are selected by the selector and are referred to as the subject. So I think this slide, it's like trying to explain code in a way, but it's easier to see it in action. Now, the last line just before the question, most common types of selectors are the element name by ID or by class, right? So I've introduced the HTML attributes. You understand what is happening there. And then I said we can use the ID or the class to refer to a particular element or a group of elements. So in this line, most common types of selectors are by element name, by ID, or by class. We can have the paragraphs. So when you use the paragraph as it is right now in our code, we are referring to all the paragraphs in our web page, right? So by element name will be anywhere we have a paragraph in our website. We can give it some effect. The best thing is the best way to use elements is when you want to have uniform color throughout your website or uniform font type. Okay. Now, by ID, it's of course a unique paragraph, like one paragraph, probably like a quote, right? You want it to stand out outside the rest. For example, in my slide, you'll see that my title is in red, it's in bold. Of course, it's a heading, but if you think about it as a paragraph, it's styled differently, right? And then by class, is the same as by element, but only to a specific set of paragraphs, not all of them. Okay? So how I can easily talk about this is saying element is for all appearance of the let's say paragraph. Let me use paragraph as an example. Then class is equals to some paragraphs and then ID is equals to some only one paragraph. Okay, so with this in mind, the elements, all appearances of the paragraph in the entire website, the entire web page, anywhere there's a paragraph and you want to uh, give it something unique, you can just use the element itself. Okay, and then the class is only for some paragraphs in that, so it's better for this particular web pages, not all of them. Then ID, it's only for one paragraph, right? So that's why, okay, really, I was to ask you that question, why do you use an ID or class? But I think I've answered that question there. Okay, so we have the three options of accessing CSS or styling our web pages using the HTML element itself, the class, or the ID, right? Now there are others as well. There are others. Now this table shows just the different types and how you can implement it. So the elements, as I've just talked about, all HTML elements of this particular type. So we have paragraph. Anywhere there's a paragraph, it will apply that particular style. The ID is only for a unique paragraph. And at this point, we are going not take note of the code, rather where my cursor is. When we have the paragraph, we'll put the ID attribute inside and then give it a name. Okay. Or so this example has a paragraph or a link, right? So you need to specify the name of that at ID, and that is the syntax. Right? And then for the class, it's also the same in that we'll have the the element, and then we have the attribute class, and then the name of the class. Okay. Now, if you look at the first line, that is how you're going to refer to it in CSS, a dot and then my class. I skipped down for ID. So for an ID in CSS, use the hashtag and then the name of that ID. Right. Now the other two are not so popular. We have the attribute and the pseudo class. So sometimes it's just really on the particular attribute for that element. You might want to change it. Or you can use a pseudo class selector. Now, actually, the pseudo class is really popular, but mostly with frameworks. Okay. So with, I believe you have already seen something that's similar to this, yeah? where if you check your CSS, we were styling the links, the home, about us, contact us. So when you look at the code that modifies the links, you'll notice that we have something similar to this. Okay, so it's basically where you need to give it some action. It's like we call it a state, like what is it currently and how we want to display it in a few. Okay, so basically this is where I will take a pause from the theory and do some exercise or some coding. So we want to modify a paragraph using an ID, and then we modify some headings using a class, and then maybe we can also review the pseudo class selector. Okay, so open your VS Code. Sorry about that. So we are on home.html. I'm using home because that's where we have a lot of content, right? So currently our home looks like this. We have, I can't be heard. Okay. Sorry. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Oh, all right. I thought I can't be heard. If I'm not audible, just interrupt and let me know. But I think I can continue for now. Yeah. Okay. So we were on the code. So we'll be working on the home.html for now. We have several paragraphs and several headings, right? So let's work on the second sections, right? So what do we do? Lost it. Okay, so I want the plan is we modify a paragraph. I want to make it to look like a quote, like something that will stand out to the user, right? Or the viewer of our website. Then afterwards, we'll modify the headings. So what you're going to do after the first paragraph, where we're introducing our website, I want us to add a second paragraph there. So this can be any text you think of. Most of the time, people just use the normal lorem ipsum, if you're familiar with that. But I can come up with a simple line that says, kickstart your journey with us. Okay. So that is the paragraph I want us to work on. So on my screen, it's line number 20. So you'll say you can have the same text or any other text that you think of, but it will be text that we want it to stand out completely from the others. So it's like a quote or just something something that will capture the attention of the users, and it's not really a title, right? So what we'll do first, we will give it an ID. So put ID, And then quote is a keyword, so let's just use the first word there. So kickstart. So it's easier to remember which line it is. Okay. So I hope you're with me there. So just on your side, have that line where we have the paragraph, then it will have that ID, kickstart, and then the text is kickstart your journey with us. So I'll give you a second to complete the code. Okay, so next we'll move back to our CSS document. In our CSS document, we are going to give it a particular style. So we'll increase the font size and the font color. So in this case, we'll put hash and then kickstart. So that's the name of our ID, and then curly braces afterwards. Is it kicks? It's kickstart. Just confirm. Okay. Now what we're going to do, increase the font size. Give it 45 px, and then color yeah, I'll give it like a purplish color there. So you can have that piece of code, and then once you are done, you can save and then refresh your browser. Right, so refresh and see what is happening. Okay, so okay, actually on my side it looks a bit funny. It looks just the same as the other titles. So you can just modify it as much as you think of. Let me also add a line. Text align center, just to make it look much better than how it was before. But that's just the idea, right? Where you'll notice that the rest of the paragraphs are still font size. I think it was 16, and it's small. And then for my quote, like just for it's like a title, but it's still a paragraph, I've styled it a bit differently. Okay, so that's that's the idea behind ID, using an ID to style just one element. Okay, so while we're here, I'll just add um, the next activity, which is to style a class, and then maybe that is on headings. Yeah, so I'll give the name headings. Now remember to put a dot instead of a hashtag. Hashtag is ID. Class is a dot, right? Then we put some styling there. Now, initially, if I go back up, we had on my screen, it's line number 7, where we have the H1, H2, H3 grouped together. Now, this is the same for all the headings. They'll have this color. But maybe you'd want to give some extra styling, so on, maybe to some particular colors, or instead of calling it H1, H2, H3, we can just give it one class. Okay, so I want to delete this piece of code from line number 7 to line number 9. So do that as well. I'm not sure what number it is on your side, but basically on my screen, it's line number 7, 8, and 9. I want you to delete that, and then we can we can now use a class instead. Okay, so delete the styling where we had the H1s, and then inside the headings, we will put sorry, let's use that one. We'll select and give it a unique, just the same, I think it's the same color I had before. So if I repeat my thought process again, we had a line that had H1, H2, H3, and then we were giving it some color. I have deleted that and used it, changed it to be headings, then the same color, or you can even change to a different color if you want. So what is the next step? The next step is now going back to our HTML, and anywhere we have a heading, we give it that class. So this is going to be quite tasking, but I just like you to understand how it works. So that's the class, and then the name is headings. So anywhere you see a H1 or a H2 or a H3, put a space there and then type class equals to headings. Now headings is just the name of the class that we're using in the style.css. So the quickest is just to copy. You don't need to keep typing. Copy and then you paste it anywhere there's a heading. So once you're done, just refresh to see. You might not notice the difference, but if you click, let's say, on the contact us or about us page, you'll notice that they are broken. While the one for home, since you have given that class, it will still work. Okay, so if I go to my web page, I refresh, nothing changes. But if I go to about us, or is it, we didn't have any, let's style this one. Oh. I think reach us on is a H1, but I'm not so sure. Anyway, our focus is on this side. Okay, so sorry, I got dropped for a hello.
Yeah, hello, can hear you.
Yeah, oh, I'm waiting for the thumbs up. Perfect. Okay, so I think that is just the idea behind class and styles and sorry, class and ID and how you can use it as a selector to give several elements a particular style. Now, the next thing, this is also some theory, bear with me, and that is how we write CSS in a web page. Okay, now when I tell you to go online and maybe do your own research, you might find different ways of how things are done. So let me just explain how CSS works or how you can access it on your web page. So the browser will format the document according to the information in the style sheet, which can be written in three ways. Okay? So we can have an external document, we can have CSS in the same document, or CSS within the element. So I'll start with external. That one is quite easy because it's what we're doing currently. We have a document called style.css. We have placed all our CSS code there. And you'll notice that the extension is .css, so that the browser will interpret it as styles. And know if we've said dot headings, we know that that's a class. Okay. And then it will be imported onto the HTML document using the link. Okay. We placed the link in the head section. We did that yesterday for all the 3 files that we have: home, about us, contact us. In the head section, we imported the link to the CSS document. Right? Now, as you've already noticed, it's suitable for uniform styling across all the web pages. So this document, if you're using, for example, if you're using like the HTML element selector, where we want all the paragraphs to look the same, all the headings to look the same, it's best to put it in a external document. Then you just import it into each web page and the style will be affected, right? And then the best or the advantage with doing this is the changes are made in one file. So if I need to change the color, I don't need to go to each document and look for the paragraph and modify it. I just need to change the color in one line and things are fine. However, there are times when you want to write um, the CSS just in one document. Okay, we'll use the style tag inside a HTML file. And most of the time, we put it in the head section, not the body section. It's suitable for unique styling only for one web page. So most of the times, things like login, the login page on maybe there's an online website that you want to use, the styling that is used there is usually different from the rest of the um, documents or web pages. So you might find that the background in the home page is like a dark green, while the rest of the web pages, the background is white. Okay, so that's the idea I want you to have in mind. So you can have just some unique styling only for one web page, and instead of creating a second .css document, you can just put it inside the file that you're working on right now and stop at that point. So it's only suitable for unique styling on one web page. Okay, so I'll get to show you how we can do that. But you'll notice that we have to use the style tag. The style tag has to be done so that the web browser will understand that at this point, this is the style that you want to use. Now, the last one is inline. Inline is only to apply a style to a unique element. A unique style to only one element. Okay, so we already use ID, but that is when we are putting it inside the CSS code. How alternatively, instead of using ID, we can use the inline styling. Okay, but the only reason why we are doing inline is when it's only like one or two things that you want to modify, maybe the color and maybe make it underline, and that's it. Okay, so for example, what we've just done, instead for the to make it look like a quote, we just change the font size. So that one can be achieved just with inline styling. Okay, instead of doing it in a CSS document, right? So it's more of a preference, but as long as it's like, let's say up to like 5 things you're modifying, it is okay to use inline. But if it's more than that, more than like let's say 10 declarations, I feel like it will become so jumbled up, your code may not look presentable. So you better use a internal styling or just place it inside the actual CSS file. So these three ways, let's see how we can achieve them. For external, we've already done that, so skip it. I want to start with inline, and then we can do internal, right? Inline is a bit easier, it's short. Okay. So back to my VS Code, my where we are editing everything. Now, last week, I mentioned that since we were creating content using AI, it's good to put that disclaimer so that everyone can understand that this is happening. Okay, so it's like a footer. It's like those terms and conditions, and you put it at the bottom where no one reads. But in case someone asks you, you've placed it there. So I want us to format the last line that says this content is AI generated. Now, if you don't have this, kindly add it. Just ensure that it's after the body. Sorry, just before the closing body tag. So you have the last line and then the closing body tag. So I'll give you 1 second in case you don't have this to add it. And then we can give it some unique styling at this point. So in home.html or even in the others as well, if you did it in home, you can also add it in about us or in contact us. Okay, so next, let's give it some unique styling. Now this is, think of it like terms and conditions that usually appears at the bottom of a web page. I think it's usually popular in things that, for example, like a bank. You notice at the bottom they have an offer, they say terms and conditions apply, and usually at the bottom it's tiny, it doesn't really stand out, okay, because they want the message to stand out more than the terms and conditions. So that's the idea I have in mind with this. And we'll put some style to make the font smaller than the rest, right? So we'll pick style, and then we'll pick font size equals to 10 px, and then color can be black. Okay. So if you're done with that, you can refresh your browser and you'll notice that the line will be smaller than the other paragraphs. Okay, so hopefully you have finished typing the code. I'll come back to it again in a few. Okay. Okay, So if you see my screen, this content is AI generated using ChatGPT. It's so tiny, it's small. At first glance, the image is actually standing out more than that text. Okay, so when you want to style a paragraph uniquely, you can use the ID or you can do in style. Okay, in inline styling or ID. So there are several ways of achieving the same thing. Now, at this point, I want to ask, probably this goes to anyone who has done this before. At what point do we use inline and what point do you use ID? Like, when is the best time? Best time. You can use it anytime, but the best time to use an ID and the best time to use inline. Let me hear your thoughts. Just think about it. At what point is ID better? At what point do you think styling inline is better?
Hello, just wanna give it a try.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe when you want to do styling for specific elements and you don't want it to affect the rest of your, so you just want specific sections within your web application or website. Just
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else who wants to answer? Okay, but that's actually the idea. Sometimes we can use an ID. ID is good when we are. It will actually come in handy when we look at JavaScript, and probably by then you will understand the difference. Okay? But right now it's not so clear. But you'll notice we use inline styling or using an ID later on. Okay, so just give me 1 second. Sorry about that. It was a phone call that I had to pick. Okay, so as I was saying, in when to use inline styling and when to use ID. With ID, I mentioned we use it with JavaScript, with CSS, and any other programming language. So it might be you'll get to understand how it works later on. But for now, it works the same when you do inline styling or use an ID. So either option is the same. Okay, now we were to do class, but internal styling, which is similar to how for example, this is some code that we might be doing. We might get to look at in a few, but this website for W3 schools, they use internal styling for guidance so that just to see the entire code in one place rather than clicking different files. So you'll notice that they have the HTML opening tag, and then inside the heading, the head section, we put some style there. Okay, so this is some code that we actually hopefully will get to work on in a few. And then the body will just now that not have any inline styling, any referencing like link or so on. Okay, so it's a good example of how you can do internal CSS using the style tag. Okay, so it's really common as well. It's really common when you just want to focus on the current web page and then work on it. Okay, so now we are, I think we are done with the um, how to write CSS. You can use either external file, internal using the style tags, or inline just within the actual HTML section. Now, at this point, let me check in and see any questions so far, any place I need to clarify. Silence means yes, or silence means you're okay. Right. Okay, so that's the first section. Now with CSS or with web applications, what we have done, we have learned this is a HTML document, this is a CSS document, this is how we can achieve it. And if you take a look at our code, it's starting to become rich and rich and rich. Okay. Now, what we have achieved now, as I mentioned initially, it's good enough for even to launch it and have people access our website, right? But when projects become complicated and have more things that we need to display in different ways, we want to style it differently or even more modern, there are other ways that we can achieve this. So a good example is I don't think our about us has been styled so much, right? So if you did it, that's okay. But if you take a look at my screen, my about us, it is not visually appealing, right? We have changed the headings. I don't think I actually had headings. I did not style it in any way, but it was purposefully for this next section or the next 1 hour what we're going to be doing, right? So if yours is a bit styled, that's all right. But if it's prose, just a whole dump of text, we can follow along. Okay, so what I can do, I can share with you this text, and then we can style it properly. Well, actually, I'll share with you together with the code. That is better. Yeah. All right. So at this point, we are no longer at home.html. We'll be working on aboutus.html. So you can click on that. But of course, I need to introduce some concepts first before we start styling. So now there are there's a concept on how we can structure our web page so that one section appears differently from another section just within our web page. Now we have this element called div. This, I think after paragraph, this is the most common element that you will see or encounter when you're working with Frontend. The div element defines a division or a section within our web page or a HTML document. And it always starts on a new line, and it will take the available width. Okay, so let me repeat again. The div element defines a section within our web page. Each section will start on a new line and it will take the default width of our web page. Okay, that is if we just say div and then continue with the rest of the HTML elements. But you'll see like in a few minutes, we'll style it in a way that we can fit the width to a particular size. We can also make it in line. The divs can be in one line and so on and so forth. But if we just use the default way, how it is, it will always start in a new line and it will take available width. So what do we use div for? To group sections of our web page together, and it will always contain other elements, other HTML elements like a paragraph, a heading, can have a what is it, links, images, all those elements that we just come up with, we've interacted with, we can put them in divs to group them in sections, right? So multiple div elements can group them together and be styled independently of each other. So of course that is using a class, right? Or you can use inline styling as well. You can use a class, you can use an ID, or you can use an inline styling. So any of the three concepts we just learned a few minutes ago. So div, I still want to insist because we will be using it a lot and a lot and a lot, and you continue your journey in front end, you will be encountering divs more often than not, because you're able to section things in one way and even style it in a better way than we just have our web page as it is currently. All right. So before I go to grid, let's style our document in a better format. So we are in about us, and after the image, I only had that one paragraph that is really long and really not styled, right? But the good thing is on my VS Code, they have been sectioned into better, so it's like easier for me to read through. So what you're going to do, I want us to divide the text into three sections. Okay, so we divide this text into three sections, and probably just look at the content and see where we can style it. So I have the initial paragraph at the top. I'll skip that. So I want you to actually, let me just see because this point, I want to see if we are all together. Do we have that such a paragraph on about us? Yeah. Let me see. Do we have such a paragraph? You can say yes or thumbs up. One yes. Perfect. Okay. Great. So whatever content you have, it's fine. Remember, the content at this point doesn't really matter because we are learning, and you could have lorem ipsum, that is okay. So we want to change this text into three sections. So I'll count 3 paragraphs, I put a div. At the next paragraph, I put a div, and so on and so forth. Okay, so later on, we'll come and remove this paragraph in a few. But let's start with the first section. So put a div there, and then we'll have the first 3 lines of code. So I want to cut and paste. Yes, it's like moving the code inside. After the first div, put a second one. So let me leave it at that point first so that you can follow. So after the paragraph, just go onto a new line and create a div, and then cut the first 3 paragraphs and paste it inside the div. So you'll have something that looks like what is on my screen at the moment. So I'll pause for a second so that we can follow along. If you're done, just do the same for the second and the third sections. Okay, so I'll continue. Hopefully you're following along. So just divide this into 3 again. Put a div there. And then the last div. Now, once you're done, delete the opening and closing paragraphs. The opening and closing p tags. So we are not using that anymore. So I don't think I placed my closing tag. Just clean up a bit. Right? So you'll have your 3 sections there. Okay. Now, for each of our div, I'd like us to have some title. So it's like H2. Like who we are. Normally that's what is there in a web page. So we have each section should have at least one heading, right? So we have who we are, what we do. H2. And then maybe usually there. like our impact. Yeah. And the title doesn't really go with the content. It's fine. We just need some text inside, some heading. Okay, so we have our divs, and then oh yeah, so for each of the paragraphs, give it an actual paragraph tag. Oh god, so we actually had some extra styling to do. So for each line, give it a paragraph. I'll copy this because the other way is really annoying. If your text is short, I believe you'll be done. Oh, I finished mine. Now, if you're done, just check on your browser to see what are the changes, how it looks like. So with this, you have to be really careful when you've opened and closed your tabs. There's a reason why I'm doing this. So there's a concept I want to explain. And I'm on my last one, but I'll give you 1 more minute to modify on your side. So basically what I've done, I've changed each line of to be a paragraph on its own. So it's not the way it was initially, we just dumped everything there. Okay, so wherever you add, that's okay. You will, I'll give you after the class, you can clean it up a bit better. But as long as you have the div is the important part. The paragraphs, well, not so much. Now, why did I want to insist that you put each as a paragraph? Divs and actually in HTML, there's a concept of what they call like block elements. So block elements mean that they start in each element starts in its own line. If you compare with how it was initially, of course, that would be through memory. How my about us was initially, everything was just in one place, and the lines were there were no. It's like enter, yeah, enter on micro on MS Word. So all the texts were just jumbled and put together and squeezed. But when we use a div or a paragraph, you'll notice that anywhere we've put the closing tag, the next element, it will start on the next line. Okay. When we start and when you open the paragraph tag, it will open on a new line. It's like a new paragraph. If you think about the normal English or way we write our stories, yeah. Each paragraph starts on a new line and there's space between that paragraph and the previous paragraph. So when we use div or we use paragraph, it will always appear in a new line. Okay, so that is a concept probably I'll leave you to go through. Let me see. Let's see. Let me, because I want you. It's more of something that you will learn about over time. Now is that like block and line, please. So this is the concept that you can look into. Let me put it on the chat. Okay. So block level and inline, how do they work? The element will take up the entire space, the width that I think yesterday we worked on width of our document, right? While the inline will be it's like a sentence, put a full stop, but you still continue writing some other code. So, of course, this is not what I'll be teaching. I'm teaching from this slide. Um, Block and inline. It's a concept that I want you to have in mind, because what I want us to do next is to structure this text or these three sections to appear in, so you really can see. Let me use my cursor. We have this section, the middle section, and the right section. So instead of it appearing in prose format like you scroll down, I want us to structure it in a different way, where we have one section on the left, another section in the middle, and the last one on the right. And then each one of them will have different colors, right? So you'll notice that some other websites have this as part of uh, their styling, right? So the div, what you've done, we have grouped them into three sections: the who we are section, the what we do section, and our impact section. So how you've named it, that's okay as well. Right? So before we do that, let me introduce the concept behind it, and it's called grids. So initially, if you learned CSS some time back and you're refreshing, you might note that um, it works similar to something that was there before. But grid is a new way, a grid-based layout, right? Is a new way of achieving how you can structure your web page. Now, actually, before I talk about grids, need to talk about layout. Layout is just the way your web page looks like, yes. But you can have the top section, the bottom section, there's a left section where you have some menu. Then in the middle, there's a main content, now the content that you want to see. Let's use the PowerPoint slides that I'm just displaying on the screen. On the top part, we have the name of the file, then some menu. On the left side at the top left to top right, we have some other links. On the far right, we have some links going downwards. Okay, but if I move to the different slides, the top section, the far right section doesn't change. Okay? They are always the same, no matter the slide that I'll go to. Okay, then I'm left with the left section and the middle section. Let me start with the left. The left section is scrollable without scrolling the entire web page. Okay, that is another section on its own. The middle section is the main content that we see. This main content, if you look at it, if I move to another slide, it changes. It's affected by the click over, when I click each slide, right? So you can see the difference. The top section, that is where we have our menu. The far right, we have some icons. The far left, we have a scrollable section. And then the middle is just content that changes anytime we click on a new slide. It's basically how we are moving our slides. Okay, so when you talk about layout, HTML layout, that is that's how we can structure our files, our web pages. We can put it in sections using divs. Now, when you build up on divs, we have a grid. If you think about it abstractively, you can see there's like a line that appears, an invisible line that appears here to signify that this is the top section. Then an invisible line that appears at this side when I'm just placing my cursor, and um, the icons are on another section. So the grid is it just helps us to show to section out our web page. So yes, what is it exactly? We use divs to achieve these grid sections that I'm talking about, where we have rows and columns, making it easier to design our web page. And how do we achieve a grid? First, we'll surround everything in a main div. So you'll notice that when we open any web page, after the body element, we have a div immediately after it, and then everything else. That way, we are able to section out each thing. We have its own section, have its own section, right? So we also give the status of the grid as a grid container to that main div, and then specify the width of each column. So we can structure them out in a way that it can be one section, second section, and a third section. So using a grid layout, it will help us achieve that, what I'm talking about. So let's start with the first. Let's start with the first slide, the first activity, and that is to section out our three divs. We want the who we are to appear on the right, on the left side. What we do is in the middle, and then our impact will be on the far right. Okay, so let me go back to my code, and then probably it will, of course, it will be easier to understand with practice. So this is the code that we'll be using. Okay, so we have the HTML, the head that is standard at this point. Now the first thing, of course, I'm using it. I was using internal styling that everything is in one place, but you can move this to um, the main CSS file so that it is unique across all the other, if you ever need to use it. Anyway, the div, we have some styling there that we need to achieve, but the structure is we have our title, we have our paragraph, and then this is the main div I'm talking about. Okay. Main div. Div, of course, is like divider. I guess you can get the intuition from that. Right, so the main section, we have this, and then it's given the styling based on the class that is written in the style section, this grid container. So they're just the same. And then we have three divs inside it. Then we close it. Okay, so closing. So we are able to track what I'm doing. So this last div will just close the main div that we opened at the top. So that's the first thing I want us to add. So you'll go at this point, like I expect you to just start typing. Immediately after the body, at this point, skip up to just above the first div. I want the rest to remain the top section. After the first div, oh, so before the first div is, that is after an image. we put a div there. Of course, it will self-close, but I'll delete that. Basically, I'll cut it and place it at the bottom, just before the body. I hope you follow that. Before the first div that you just written, put another div above it. And then close it before the body. So this is the main div and this is the closing div. Closing main div. Okay. So nothing will, honestly, nothing will change on your browser. If something breaks, probably it's just the closing. If you've closed it before, but at this point, there's nothing will change. Next, this section. Let me close this. Second. Next, we give it, we want to style each div to have its own. First, we need to use the inline. So I'll copy this on code share. Kindly access it from there. I'll put it on code share. Let me refresh. You don't have to. Yeah. So the link is still the same. Let me paste it on the chat. The link is still the same. Just copy that and place it in the head section. Alternatively, maybe later after the class, you can put it in the main document style.css. But remember, we are trying all methods. So I'll paste it in the head section. I can place it after the title so that it's easier to track. And then we take that class, the name of the class, and place it inside our main div. Okay, so let me try and see if you can see this. Yeah. So I have line number 10 to 15. That is where I have placed my style. So hopefully you can see that. 10 to 15, that's where I've placed my style inside the head section. Then that name of the class, line number 11, grid container, grid dash container. I'll call it in the div, the main div, not the subdivs. Right. So once you do that, you can refresh your browser to see if there's any change, if something has happened. It looks funny. Now you'll notice things start breaking when you introduce divs and you need to fix it and work on it. That's when things start breaking. So what we will do in each div, we are going to adjust um, sorry, you'll notice the image and the main title about talent for startups is okay, but it's this tiny divs that are breaking, the sub divs, if I call it that. So that is where we want to start fixing, right? So we start with the first one. Mhm. Let's give it a color and a width. Okay, so um, fine, copy the first div, the one that has who we are. Let's start with that. We put a style, and then we want to fix the width. I can use fit content or no, but fit content. Let me use 300. Not sure if that will affect it, but let's just try. Then the background. And let me just give it any color. You can please style yours in a nice way. Okay, so change the color and the width. So here we are using inline styling. We're using inline styling in that for each of the divs, we'll give it different colors. It will have the same width, but different colors. So I've just been modifying line number 27 on my screen, and that is the first div called who we are. Who we are div. We have the width to 300. Sorry, this is a typo there. 300 px, and the color is Alice blue. Pick a nicer color than mine. Maybe I can actually adjust it a bit. It has some nice purple shade. Once you're done, click save and refresh on your browser to see if something has changed. My paragraphs are still okay. Once you're done that, repeat the same steps for the other divs. Right. Give me a second. I need to attend to one small thing, then we can continue. Just 1 second. Hi. I've been talking. So I was trying to. I've been trying to. I was saying we can use the overflow. It's one of those properties that help in squeezing the div. Um, but I wanted to use scroll so that the div becomes scrollable, but it looks like it's not working. So I think I'll have to look for another option. So do that for, just let me copy this tile onto my other. Um, so there's one last thing that I want us to do before we close for today. Just one tiny thing. Okay. Okay. So unfortunately, it looks like um, it's just truncating. It's not going into the next line. I'll blanking out on the method to fix that. But the idea is we were able to structure our divs in 3 columns, and once we fix the overflow thing, everything will look seamless. The one last thing I want us to do, because I will not have you guys next week, is icons. So please bear with me, give me just an extra 5 minutes um, to look at icons, and specifically, if you're seeing my screen and you look at my tabs, each of the tab has an icon and the text about the web page, the title. But if you look at our website, our icon is just like the world, that the default icon that comes with any HTML document. Now, if you want to modify the icons, we can get it from somewhere. So there's a nice website. I'm just blanking on the name. Fab icon, yes, specifically the generator. It can create for us an icon using the text that maybe the title of the website. So what I like you to do is go there and then create your sorry, it has not loaded. Let me share this as well. So that's the link. I've pasted it on the chat. Click on it and then create an icon using a letter. So for us, it's called Talent for Startups. So I just can use T for S. That is the now. Sorry, let me reduce. I was using this somewhere else. Okay, so that's what you'll be seeing here. Make sure you are in the in this site for generate. So you can click generator if you're lost, and then you get this part. Now we have, you'll see at the top, so actually T4S looks funny. We're having an issue with our truncating in it. So we can have generate from text, but I think you can also generate from an icon. It's somewhere. Can use, let's try emojis. You can also use emojis where you can use a heart or any other. So I leave you to go through it. This one, I leave you to go through and look for other, like a better logo, not just text. So for my demonstration, I'll use text because it's quick and easy. So I'll just use the capital T so that we can use it. And then once you have it, you can change the color. My color scheme is purple. And you can change the font as well to have like a nice, some nice effects. Pick any anyway, and then you can download it. So it will download a zip folder for you. Okay, so I hope you have followed up to that step. You click on the link that I've shared on the chat. Then by default, it will take you to generate from text. Later on, I'll ask you to generate using an emoji or create a logo, something that is better. Yeah. But then once you generate it, you can use, since you're using text, so you can change the color and the font to just make it much better. And then download you click on the download button. So what I'll do, I'll open where I've placed it. I believe that's it. So I want use the file ICO, not PNG. Any of the PNGs is too big. Pick the ICO, that's an icon. That's what we can put on the tab. The PNGs, you can use it later when you have a banner and you want to have like a nice logo. You can use those options. So pick the PNG and paste it in our images folder. Okay, so this is what I have. You can see on my screen. After I clicked the download button, of course I unzipped the folder, and then I'll pick the ICO, the one that says ICO. The ICO, I'll copy and paste it into the images folder in my project. So my project was on desktop. We placed it there just the same way we did it last week, where we got images, then we placed it in our project. Now the last thing we need to do is import that image onto our code. Right? So back to my code, and we can use this that has we have title and inside title I want to put the image. So I'll say IMG the source is images. So I'll be picking my icon and then I close it. Let me just test to see that I did not pick. What happened? Okay, give me a second. Did I mix a few things? Just give me a second. Oh, okay. I've seen. You need to use the link. Wow. I'm trying to rush. I am skipping several steps. Sorry about that. I'm trying to finish within the time I'd promised you. So yeah, I've seen where my mistake was. So it's not really in title, it's a link, using the link property. So sorry about that. So no, this is in images. Oh yeah, right. I was worried for a second there. Okay, let me return back to the code. Sorry. So above title, use the link attribute, and then you put the href and the icon, and the okay. So let me check in to see how far we are going. Thumbs up if something going on here. Okay. All right. Thank you, Collins. Another thumbs up. Hope you're still with me. Right. Faith Bravin, are you stuck? Should I return to the code? Okay. Thank you. Right. So let's see. Faith is typing.
Could you return to the code for a second?
Okay.
Okay.
There you go. So just to do a quick recap of, then I can release you. We have worked on today's effects were quite minimal, unlike yesterday's, because we were working to structure our our web page that is about us into a better format. So I'll share the slides once again, just as last week. I'll upload them onto the LMS, and then you'll be able to follow now much better at your own pace on the different steps that we've covered. That is, you can also try out the inline and so on. Now, how I'd like you to finish, I'll share this file that works on a full grid where you will section it into the top section, the heading section, then the content section, then the footer section, and as well as a navbar. So I'll share it with you so that you can go through it at your own pace and structure your web pages to look like that. So the effect is not so different when you look at it on the web page, but on the code, I'll be able to know, because when you use that, we'll be using several divs. So I'll upload this. It will be like an exercise that I'll upload onto the LMS that you can follow, of course, with the instructions on how to achieve it. Okay, so with that in mind, I think I won't have you guys next week, because I think you'll be doing your first soft skills session. So we will meet the other week. It will be tentatively, it will be on 11th of April, depending on Ramadan, it will be confirmed. If it's not, if it's pushed before, of course, communication will be given beforehand until we've gotten a confirmation of the holiday. or not. So I'll leave you at this point. I'll upload that exercise that you can use to follow. I'll also have fixed that issue with the div that you can look at it and solve it. And on that note, let me end the class 13 minutes late. Sorry about that. Okay, bye.
Bye.